All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone out there in the World Wide Web. Welcome to episode 43 of the Gretch Afternoon Drum Break. I am so excited to be chatting with the incredible Cindy Blackman Santana. I've been aware of Cindy for a number of years now, been a fan of her playing. I think I remember seeing clips and hearing about her sometime in the late 80s, early 90s, and then, of course, with her worldwide exposure with the Lenny Kravitz Gig. We're going to chat about her musical journey thus far and all the way up to present day, playing with the Santana Band. Cindy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Always great to be with you guys.
This is awesome. I watched you last week on Lucas's show, and that was great. And I gathered some information, and man, that was just inspiring. And I'm furiously taking notes and just wanting to know kind of things about your past. So let's go back to, well, actually, let's talk about what have you been doing since last March when everything got shut down.
Oh my goodness. I've just been taking this time to really work on reinventing myself as a musician, as a person, trying to be the best Cindy that I can be and trying to be the best help and inspiration that I can be to those people around me and to everyone, in terms of uplifting this negativity off of us, because this COVID thing has really caused a lot of people to go into like really deep
for sure
depression, and sadness. And, we have to keep the light at the end of the tunnel and keep getting closer to that and understand that, we will get through this phase, and it's a tough one, but we will survive it. Humanity is strong, and we have to help each other to understand that and help each other propel ourselves through that with as much positivity as possible. So, that's a lot of what I've been working on. Some new music, of course, going really deep inside in terms of meditation and focus. My studies, I study metaphysics, so I take several classes, that's part of the reinvention of myself. And then to be able to hone in and really focus in on certain aspects of my playing, and to learn new things. I love learning new stuff. And then when I can learn something, I love to apply it,
What are you working on as a drummer?
As a drummer, I'm refining my technique in terms of being efficient, in terms of managing and focusing my energy output so that it's like laser pinpoint and very accurate, so that I'm not wasting any momentum. I'm making my playing more lean with still trying to keep a lope kind of feel in it, but still very lean. I've been working on my breathing, and I'll correct this right now. Working on my posture. So and breathing is very important. It's important not only for drumming, it's important for life. So I've been working on my breathing, just honing in on things that I work on anyway, but now this quiet time gives me a chance to really, really focus in on it.
And to be aware of those things, because our lives were so hectic and fast paced that you forget to breathe, as simple as that sounds, and
Yeah.
I have a mirror sitting right here. Every time I practice, I'm watching and seeing, being aware of posture, as you said, and breathing. That's really great. It's, so you want to use this time to come out the other end being a much better person and better musician and person. Dinah Gretch is here. She said she's agrees and to be positive. Hi, Dinah. Nice to see you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. from all over the world. We have someone watching from Spain. This is really awesome. Thank you so much. Well, that's a great thing to do, is to be able to take the time and to be productive. As I think you might have been off the road for a week or two, or maybe a few months at a time, but then it's back to going, at a fairly hectic schedule. So it's nice to have a prolonged period where you can work on you, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. I'm also doing something new for me, which is that I've never had a trainer. Like I've trained with somebody, but it's never been consistent where I have like a certain amount of days per week that I'm training. So now I found a really great trainer. He's so patient, and he really keys in on my movements and what my goals are. So this is working out really, really wonderfully for me, and it's a challenge. We trained this morning, and I was like, oh my gosh. And sometimes we do with weight, sometimes without. He changes it up, and so every day is like a surprise for me, because I don't know exactly what we're going to do. So this is also really a great thing that I'm able to do in this period as well.
That's wonderful. Let's go back to the early days. Where are you originally from?
I am from Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Okay,
And
wow.
yes. And there's
Where is that?
Yellow Springs, Ohio is in southwestern Ohio. It's near Springfield. It's near Dayton. It's like 20 minutes from Dayton. It's not too far from Cincinnati and Xenia. So it's right in that little niche. And Antioch College, if you've ever heard of that, which in the 70s was one of the top 10 colleges in the country, is in Yellow Springs. And a beautiful thing about Yellow Springs is that when I was growing up, the population was 3,000.
Wow.
And they call it a large village. It's not even called a town. It's a large village. And even now, I checked, my cousins still live there, and the population is 4,700. And so, I love the small town vibe, because everybody knows everybody, and everybody has to own everything that they do, because everybody sees you. So
That's
it's really
great.
great for that. Yeah, you're not getting away with anything. You have to own everything that you do. And especially with my family, because our kids, we were the only Black children in the town, or very few, who had red hair. My hair was really red when I was young. It got darker as I got older, but we had 4 of us, and we all had red hair and freckles. So there's no getting away with anything. They know you right away. Oh, you're one of Blackman. You're Keita and David Blackman's kids. I know you. So you're not getting away with anything. And that was a great lesson. Because you had to really stand up, and you had to have conviction and forethought about everything that you did. So if you did something that wasn't perfect, you were very aware of it. So you had to make good choices. So it's great to grow up with.
Wow. And how old were you when you moved from there?
When we left, I was 10. And then we went to the
So that's very formative. Okay, where did you go from there?
Yes, and that's, those formative years make up your core. So I still have those core values in me. And we went to Connecticut after that. And, it's funny, because we were driving, we packed up the house, and the moving trucks went, and then we were driving, and I was crying. And my dad said, you can stay here in Yellow Springs, and you can do whatever. You can raise children, you can do things that you can do in a small town. He says, but you want to play music. You love music. He said, so going to the East Coast, where, there are more opportunities, you're going to have more opportunities for that. There'll be more opportunities for whatever you want to do in life. And the way he explained it, I started crying right there. I was like, oh, okay. So, going to the East Coast was a great thing for us. We went to Connecticut first. And so I finished high school in Connecticut. And then from there, I went to Boston and went to Berkeley College of Music. And then from there, I went back to Connecticut for like a couple of months living with my mom, and then went to New York. And that was really the beginning of my higher education.
I bet. Was it music first, or was it the drums first, or was it both?
I would say it was music first because I was so young. I was just listening to records. In the house, my dad had a lot of jazz records. My mom, she's a classical violinist. She doesn't play at this point, but, she stopped because she had 4 kids to take care of and always, 1 or 2 jobs. But, we had the classical influence. My grandmother was a classical pianist. My other grandmother played in church. My older sister sang and had like tons of records. My uncle played the vibraphone and sang and a guitar, and so there was always music around, either directly in our house or around with our immediate family and with some friends. So that influence was there. So I heard the music and I was able to distinguish the instrument that caught my attention, which was the drums. And I was like, what is that? I like that. Whatever that is, that's what I want to go for. I love that. Yeah.
That is cool. Did you have lessons at all early on, or were you playing by ear? And did you have drums at a young age?
Lesson wise, I had no lessons that early on. I wanted to study, but I didn't have any teachers right away. The first lesson I had was on piano from my grandmother. And I didn't stick with that, which wasn't smart of me. I was a kid, so I didn't know. But it was great. She taught me some really great things in that one lesson that I was able to stand at that point. She said, when I play, and my grandmother was very petite. She was like 4'10", little teeny hands, but she figured out how to make big chords with those little hands. And so it was amazing just to understand from her that, if you play a chord with both hands, this is what it is, but this is how she inverted it to make it sound big. That was just incredible. Even though I didn't understand the theory behind it, I understood the sound of it, so that opened up my ears at that time. And then she said, when I want to play, she said, I don't use the pedals. I don't use the sustain pedal. And she showed me what that was, and she demonstrated it. And she said, and this is the dampening pedal. I don't use either. She said, if I want a note to sustain, I play it longer. And if I want a note to be staccato, then I play it shorter. So if she wanted something legato, she'd play it that way. If she wanted staccato, she'd play it that way. And she said, and when I want to make a fade, I do it myself. So those were really important lessons. So in my band, the only time that I've ever recorded with an electronic fade is when we had a song that was really long and we had to cut it short. Otherwise, we do all the fades ourselves. And I got that from my grandmother. So that was a really great lesson. So I learned a lot from the people around me just by watching and listening. And then drumming wise, when we moved to Connecticut, I saw some drummers, but at my young age and without, having the foresight that I should have had, I didn't want to study with any of them because I was like, well, I don't want to play like that person, so I don't want to study with them. I thought that I would have to play like that person if I studied, but I wasn't aware enough to know that you can learn from anybody, and it's good to learn from different people. It's good to learn from different sources and grab different things and have them in your vocabulary. But I got to a point that I really felt like I needed something more. So my mom found a teacher for me, and so then I began to study. And I was in a fife and drum corps, which was the first band I was in. And I learned a ton from that because obviously you're focusing on technique and you have to play with traditional grip, and everything is with traditional grip first. So that was a great, study for me. So traditional grip is very natural for me because that's what I really learned on. So that was the start of me, taking some lessons. And then the rest was like really listening to what I was hearing on record. And then the few drummers that I was able to see, really watching them, and then taking it home and applying it.
That's amazing. It's amazing the environment. Most of the most of the guests that I speak with and have over the last year, they've started at a young age. It has been in their life. Music has been in their life. That's the common thread. And they see by watching and by doing and absorbing. And that is wonderful. So traditional grip, I'm going to jump ahead just for a second here. I believe you when you studied with Mr. Dawson, with Alan Dawson, you learned the rudimental ritual in how long was that? Did that take you?
It took about a week.
That's crazy. Most people takes several years. If you're not aware, anybody out there not aware of this rudimental ritual, it takes you through many of the rudiments and their inversions over top of the samba bass drum pattern, which is really difficult. And Cindy, so how did you get this happening in a week? Did you just go to town on this thing and were relentless?
I went to town on it because I really wanted to get it. And I already knew the rudiments, so I already knew almost all the rudiments. I knew all the American rudiments and I knew most of the Swiss rudiments. So being familiar with that, I just had to learn the sequence, and I had to learn the turnarounds and how long each section was and what have you, and then just put that together with the coordination of playing those rudiments on top of the samba. And I just really focused in on it because I really wanted to get it, and I was really so excited that Alan took me as a student, and I really wanted to do well, not only for myself, but I wanted to do well for him, because he was just so sweet and so nice and such a great teacher. And I was so young and had nothing else to do except play. That's what I did every day. It was like drums all day, every day. So, to me, there was really no excuse for me to not focus on it because, I didn't have any other responsibilities really. So it was that I focused on that. I just hit it. And, it wasn't like a 7-day period. I think my next lesson was a little less than 2 weeks. I think it was like maybe 10 or 12 days later, something like that. But I had a moment to just really key on it and focus on it. And, all of it wasn't committed to memory within that week. I read it, but I had a lot of it committed to memory. And after that, I committed it to memory. And then there were a few years that went by where, like when I was so busy touring, I didn't really do it. And then I had to go back and relearn it. I'm like, oh, dang, I used to know this. I had to go back and really relearn that. So then I did that. And it's an exercise and a challenge that is so good. And you can do it in so many different ways. That's a thing that has remained a great focus for me to this day. I still do the ritual.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Did you ever play it with brushes? Because I know he developed it. Yeah, with the brushes. That is really hard because you have to play every stroke like Tony, like you. From what I gather, Tony, I read, didn't rely on bounce, and he played these strokes. That's unbelievable. I would love to see you play that down sometime if we ever get to see in person. Just a little bit of it. I love watching you play and just your I don't know, I want to say ferocity that you have, the ferociousness that you play, but with beautiful touch and a great tribute to the history of the instrument. So.
Oh, thank you. I work on that. I think that's really important. And I'm glad you said to the history of the instrument, because the lineage of the drum set is so important to know. And anytime I do a clinic or take on a student, whenever I have time to take on students, I always stress that this seat is really important in music. Every time there's a major innovation in music, there's a major innovation in drumming. And so we need to take this thing really, really seriously and to be honored and proud to be in this seat. They don't call it a drum throne for nothing. So we need to take this very seriously. And the lineage is really beautiful. The way that we got the rhythms from Africa, and the way that we took that whole thing and applied it to a drum set, where we're playing a 4-limb style. So we're able to incorporate multiple sounds and multiple rhythms, when you're using an entire kit. It's not even just 4. because you have the four limbs, but you have other drums, so you can, make obviously other rhythms within that. So it's amazing how this has been developed. And, we need to be proud of that, because that is an American thing. We developed that here. So we need to really take heed. And I don't care what kind of music you play, but just, it's really important. You could play polkas, or you could play ragas, or I don't care what you play, but just to really be aware and proud and knowledgeable of the lineage and of the history and of where the drums came, it will make you so happy that we are afforded all of the choices that we have. And then it makes you appreciate all of the incredible drummers who gave us these choices.
Right. Right. And a lot of them have been Gretch drummers over the past in history since the 40s, probably. As you can see in the back here, I've got Tony Williams, I have Miles, I have so many of our great drummers, and oh man, just love that. And I feel the same way about the lineage I try and represent, and I try and respect the history, and did a lot of diving into the study early on when I started playing. Went back and said, okay, who is this Kenny Clark? Who was Papa Joe Jones? Who is Philly Joe Jones? And I wanted to know that, and that was fascinating to me. And you can really see where things came from. If you hear now, I hear a Vinny lick, and I'm like, well, that is a Tony thing, or that is a, that kind of connecting the dots thing. Mm-hmm. Really cool. Awesome. Let's go back to your early playing. What were your early playing experiences with playing in a band and with people? How old were you? What kind of music were you playing? Where were you? Fill us in.
Well, the very first band experience I had was with the Fife and Drum Corps that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And that was very interesting, and I really enjoyed that. We would do marches, and I liked the marches, and I liked them up to about 2 or 3 miles. When we did our first, because my I bruised really easily for some reason, so that big harness used to bruise. I padded it up with tons of padding and stuff, but I still got these big bruises on my leg. And so when we started doing like the 5-mile marches, I was out, because it just made this big bruise on my legs, and like, this is not happening. But it was great. I learned so much from that. It was really incredible. And then I played in the high school, the junior high school ensembles. And at 13, I joined my first band, which was a funk rock trio. So there was a singer who played guitar, bass player, and myself on drums. And that was really fun. And it was very safe. My mom was very, very protective of who I played with, and what it was, what the venue was, and I wasn't able to hang out in like bars and stuff. And I didn't understand why. But that's where the music is, Mom. And she's like, yeah, but I don't want to grow up too fast, so you're not going there. But this group was safe because the band leader was like a dear friend of my older sister. So my mom trusted that. So I was able to get into this band, and we did some really cool things. And then I joined a couple of bands that were like, my high school buddies. And so they were all my peers. When I was 13, the other guys were like, they were like 20 something, so they were all a lot older than me. But when I was in high school, by the time I got there were a lot of other children who were my age. And so, we formed bands. I had a best friend at the time whose name was Don Doucette, and he was a great bass player. And he and I used to play duo all the time. In the summer, he would keep his bass amp set up in my room, which is where I have my drums. So we would play every day in the summer. We would go back and forth from house to house. He lived like 2 blocks from us. And so we would go over there and listen to music. We'd come over to my house and listen to music and play, so that was all great. And then by the time I got to Berkeley, it was just like being in Disneyland. And I was like a kid in the candy store, because there were so many other kids who wanted to play. And who wanted to experiment and push the envelope and play different kinds of musics. So then I was exposed to so many other things, and that was really, really, really healthy, fun, and a great experience for me to learn and grow.
That's unbelievable. Wow. I could imagine the Berkeley experience would have been just, as you said, a kid in a candy store. Unbelievable. Do you keep in contact with any folks that you got to meet and play with at Berkeley?
A little bit, yeah, I do. And some of them, there was a woman who was my roommate. Was she my first roommate? I think she was my first or second roommate, Cynthia Smith, the vibraphone player, and we're still best friends to this day. So we we keep in touch. And then there are many others that I keep in touch on, on some other levels as well. Maybe not as much as with her, or but yeah, I keep in touch, and I keep track of what people are doing because I love to see the progress. And then there are people who came in and out, and some people who I met in New York when I first got there, and we're still in touch. Like Vincent Herring and different people, and Chris McBride, a lot of different cats, who I really respect and whose playing I love, and again, I love to see the progress and to see what other people are doing. So Antoine Roney, he's always been a dear brother to me, so we keep in touch, and yeah, I follow.
That's great. Who were your drum heroes early on?
My heroes, it's interesting because the first great drummer who I saw was Buddy Rich, and I had heard other drummers on record, but in terms of seeing one in person, that was the first great drummer. And I had seen other drummers, but never a drummer of that ilk. And I saw him by happenstance. Well, nothing is happenstance really, but so it's all meant in some way. But I was living in Connecticut, and my friends and I went to this amusement park called Lake Compounds, and we went during the day. And I heard this music, and we had tickets to go on all the rides, and I just thought my ticket could get me into that room. So I went and I handed the guy my ticket because I wanted to go. I heard a drummer, I wanted to go hear this. And the guy was like, you can't come in here. And I said, well, why? And he said, because you're a minor and they're serving alcohol. And I was like, oh, shoot. So I started hearing, somebody's taking a solo. I ran around to the window and I started looking. I'm like, whoa. Not knowing who it was. I went to my school. That was on a Sunday. So Monday I went to school and I said to my band teacher, I heard this, and I was 12 or 13, and I said, I heard this really old guy. I saw this old guy playing, and he had really fast hands. And he said, who was it? And I said, I don't know. And he said, where? And I said, at Lake Compounds. He says, you mean yesterday? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, Buddy Rich. I said, who's Buddy Rich? That was my first time seeing somebody of that ilk play. And the next person that I saw was Tony Williams. Oh. And I saw.
Wow. Let's hear about that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I saw Tony in a drum clinic, and a friend of mine, who was actually a friend of my older sister, another guitar player, he said, if you want to be a great drummer, you've got to listen to the greatest of the great. And so he took me to his house, and he and his family were upstairs eating dinner. And I was downstairs in the basement, and he put records on. And the first record that he put on turned out to be Four and More. And it just blew my mind. It was like, who the heck is that? And he said, his name is, he came down when the record was over, and I was just blown away. And he said, this is Tony Williams. And he said, how old do you think he is? And I said, I don't know. It sounds like he's about 200 the way he plays. He's been around, he sounds. And he said, on this recording, that guy is 16. And that just, my jaw dropped. I couldn't even speak after that. And then he put on Live in Europe, my favorite Live in Europe. And so Tony, at that point, became my drum hero. And so, I was going around school and around town with all the musicians that I knew, and I kept talking about this drummer, Tony Williams, who I just got turned on to. And so there was a saxophone player in our town. His name was Mixashon, a native guy. And he said, that drummer who you're talking about, Tony Williams, he's doing a clinic on Sunday, creative music. And Bob Jackson, who was one of the guys who developed the Noble and Cooley drums, he had a shop, really great shop, which is where I got my first professional drum kit. So his shop was called Creative Music. And he was holding this clinic. And so I told my mom, and she was like, well, we don't have the money, you know. My mom was a single mom, you know, working. And I begged her, but please, I got to go see Tony. And she was like, okay. So she took me to see Tony. And that was, you know, the first time I saw Tony. And that just really blew my mind, you know. So I was watching this clinic with just he and a bass player who I believe was Bunny Brunell.
Wow.
And yeah. And I was floored. I was blown away. And, you know, when he finished playing, the first round of playing that he did, he said, any questions? And I was the first one to raise my hand. I was like, yeah. And when he looked at me, he said, yeah. And I went, I couldn't even get a word out because, first of all, I didn't even know what to ask because everything that he did was just, you know, everything that he did blew my mind. The sound blew my mind. His technique blew my mind. His concept blew my mind. His control blew my mind. His whole temperament behind the drums, his posture, his stature, you know, everything, his maturity, everything about him just really flipped me out. I was like, whoa, this is incredible. So that was the next great drummer that I got to see. And, you know, he's still my hero to this day. And he was playing drums, I have to tell you. Of course, he was on his yellow Gretches.
Wow. What was that your first exposure to Gretch drums, or you'd heard them on recordings, but had you seen them and heard them before, Tony?
No, I hadn't. And I had heard them on record, and I loved the sound, but I didn't know what drums they were. But when I saw him, I'm like, okay, Gretch. And I had just gotten my kit, which was a Slingerland kit. And I was like, I wish I knew about Gretch drums. And it took me a few years to get to the point where I could get some Gretch drums. But once I did, man, I was blown away. I had and no slight on Slingerland, and I'm sorry, you know, they were wonderful for that time. But I had this whole Slingerland kit. And the first Gretch drum I got was a snare drum. And I still have it. I had this chrome snare drum. And it just blew the whole kit away, including the bass drum. And I was floored because I'm like, the bass drum is a 22-inch, and this snare drum sounds better than that. So then I traded that in and added some money to that Slingerland kit and got my first Gretch kit, which I still have. And it had some scratches on it, so I sent it to Paul Cooper. You know, our lovely Paul Cooper.
Yeah.
And they just refinished it for me. So now it's like just as pristine as it was, you know, the first day I got it.
That's beautiful. What sizes are those, and what color are they?
It's the antique mahogany, and I have the same chrome snare drum, and then I have a 12, a 14, and 18, 14 by 18. That's my bebop kit. I love it. Stop sign badge.
Wow, there's something very special about the recipe. I know Mr. Gretch calls it the recipe. They've been making drums like this for many, many years, and they stay true to the recipe. But what I found is over the years is that I don't play jazz out a whole lot these days, but I find that they are so versatile that I can play jazz gig if I need to, or I can play a country gig if I'm playing that, or I can play a pop or a rock gig. You tune them a little bit differently, and man, they sound so right. And obviously, you going from playing your jazz material to playing in a band like Santana, that covers, you know, that's an awful lot of ground.
Yeah, and these drums cover all of that. You know, I've played anything from an 18-inch kit to a 24-inch kit. You know, in fact, even with Lenny Kravitz on the 5 tour, I toured with an 18-inch bass drum kit, and everybody thought that it was like a 24 or a 26-inch bass drum. And I'm like, nuts. No, it was an 18. It was a 14 by 18-inch bass drum. You know, and it was incredible. Yeah, so great. Yeah, so I've played with the gamut of the range, you know, and they all sound beautiful. And, you know, the thing that, you know, one of my favorite things about Gretch drums is the tunability. A lot of drums are made, especially today, You know, they're made with a lot of sub in them, so you get a real woofy sound. And you know, they are loud, but they don't have a tone. So I love the drummers that, you know, sound musical and sound melodic. So Gretch drums, because you have a balance of all the ranges, and there's so you have mid. It's not just sub. You have the upper, you have the mid, and you have some lows. So since you have a balance, you can tune and get a great note, which gives you a beautiful space in the music. You know, so it allows you a wonderful separation, especially in the low range. So between the bass and the drums, you know, the bass guitar, or whether it's acoustic or electric, you know, you get a really nice separation in there. So to me, it really adds an ambiance and an aura to the music to have the right drums, you know?
Have you played the other lines of Gretsch drums besides the USA Custom?
I have, and I like the classic. I've played the classic, and I like those a lot. And so, but my favorites are the USA Custom because those are made like the vintage drums that I have, which are my absolute favorite drums. I have some round badge kits. I have some SSB kits, and you know I collect because I love them.
Oh,
The kits.
what are some of your favorite Gretsch snare drums that you have?
Oh, my number one drum, and for a long time it was the only drum that I toured with, is um, it's before the silver sealant, so it has a date stamp,
Wow.
September 15th, 1953. And I'm telling you, that drum sounds so beautiful. It's got a pearl finish, which at this point looks kind of like a light greenish because it's aged. It's so beautiful. That drum sounds really, really great. It's a 6 by 14 inch drum, and that was my number one. And I love the wood sound. You know, it's not so big that it sounds chubby. You know, it has some snap, but it's really full and wonderful. You know, so it sounds really beautiful. And then I have a chrome over brass that I absolutely love. That drum is really snappy, you know, and it's got a very immediate attack. So it sounds like it's really pushing the music forward, you know.
Okay.
So it's got a fullness, but it's got that, you know, and I really love that. Those are probably two of my favorites, and then I've got some other Gretsch snare drums, of course, as well. I've got a really interesting one that Fred and Dinah gave me, which is a 13, and I had never played the 13, but that one's popping. So although I don't play, I mean, 13 is too small for me personally to play on a gig, but I like it as a sound, you know, to record with when I want a certain sound because it's got that pop. And I've been with Santana, I've been setting up for the last year, I've been setting up a second snare drum because we play some things that really need a high pitch. So I have a 14 diameter drum that I've been using and just tuning it up really tight. But this year I'm going to be experimenting with my 13 that they gave me because I like the pop of it, you know, it really pops. So when we're doing some reggae or something where we need like a really high pitched popping sound, you know, that kind of thing can really work. So it's great for that too.
I love 13s, and I've never had a 13-inch Gretsch drum, but I must, and maybe that's something that yeah. Once we get working again, I can order one of those. I have a whole bunch of different Gretsch drums too, just enough to cover different size wood drums, different metal drums, chrome over brass. I've got a Brooklyn, I've got a USA Custom bronze, and they're all so different, but they're so great, and they work for certain things. And I have an outdoor snare drum because I found my wood drums sometimes weren't just enough, and so I got the bronze for that. So, and I call it LeBron's, actually. I named them.
I like that, LeBron's.
Yeah, LeBron's. Nice. Let's talk a little bit about your Berkeley studies. how was that for you? How long did you attend Berkeley? What kinds of things did you, what kind of experiences did you have there? What did you learn from Berkeley?
Um, well, I guess I'll start off with how long I attended. And I can say that I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But for me, I stayed about 3 semesters. And I was solid for the first year. The second year, I joined this band. It was like a vocal fusion band. And I had access to a practice space. Like we had about 20 hours access per day to the space because we shared with another band, but they were barely in there. If we were, it was like a few hours, 3 to 4 hours a day. And then we had our rehearsal whenever but otherwise it was open. So that's why I ended up not really in college that much. I really wanted to really focus on, on my playing. So I was only in the school for a few semesters, and then I went to New York. But I learned a lot because the ear training programs were really great. So being able to distinguish the different intervals and all those things were wonderful. The harmony courses were great. I had a great drum teacher. I had a couple of teachers there. The second teacher I had was Lenny Nelson.
Wow.
And they didn't keep Lenny at the school too long, unfortunately, because he didn't teach the Berkeley method. But what he taught was really great for me, for what I wanted. And he took a real special interest in me. Like he started taking me as the last student of the day, and he had me wheel my drums over. So I would wheel my drums over, and we played double drums. So he would put on, like we would go through books and stuff, and we would go through Alan's method, and then we would put on records and play the masters. So he would put on Buddy, and then we would play Buddy Rich stuff. He would put on Max Roach, and we'd play Max. And he'd put on Elvin, and we'd do that. The only drummer that he didn't focus on was Tony, and I did that myself. So I wasn't, I'm like, well, I love Tony. I'll be focusing on that anyway. But we played Art Blakey, we played Philly, so it was really great. We also experimented with tuning and with putting different things in the bass drum. He was into that, so we would put rice in the bass drums, with bags of rice. We tried paper, torn up paper, we put towels. We did different things to see what would happen with different sounds. And I like open tuning, so most of the time I don't put anything in my bass drum, but I like I love the tone controls that we have on our Gretch drums, so I use those.
Yeah.
A lot of absolutely nothing else except the tone controls that I'm using because I like the open sound. But it was wonderful to experiment with the different things with Lenny Nelson. So that was really, really great for me. So, those were wonderful things. The environment was a great thing for me, as I kind of mentioned before, because there were so many students. Like in one day, I could go from playing with a funk band to a straight ahead band to a fusion band to an Afro-centric, like Latin kind of band, to different things, So that was really a learning lesson for me as well, and then just to be in a place where everybody had the same focus as I did, which was to push the envelope and further themselves and to develop what they were doing and to really hone in and focus on music. That was a great environment for me. I really loved that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I knew you before the Lenny Kravitz gig as actually, I think I heard of you perhaps first with Lenny and then looked back into your past and went, because you didn't look like you were just, you look like you had a whole lot of skill. You know what I mean? So, and finding out that indeed, yes, my hunch was right, that you were a jazz drummer. So you also did have a love for pop and rock and funk music, not just jazz, correct?
Correct, correct. Because I grew up with all of that in my house, and to me, jazz was the ultimate. And when I really, we had a friend, Doug Woods, who changed his name to Daoud. He played with Jackie McLean, and he was a family friend of ours. And he said, "I'm going to show you something," and he wrote out a pattern from Max Roach, which was swinging in the right hand, 2 and 4 in the sock cymbal foot, triplets in the left hand, and 4/4 on the bass drum. And I was like, huh? And I was just turning 13 at that time. So that really opened my head up because the drummers that I had been listening to were like a 3-limb style, basically, and they played great, but it was 3-limb. So when I got turned on to the 4-limb, or really becoming aware of the 4-limb, it was like, whoa, okay. So jazz became my favorite thing because that was the most advanced thing. It was the most challenging thing. It was, the thing that pushed me the most. You know what I mean? So that was a beautiful discovery. So I've always been thankful for him for making me aware of that and turning me on to that.
I thought it the most fascinating thing ever when I went and saw a band. I was just started playing drums, and I was seeing this hi-hat closing with the foot, and I thought it was the most beautiful look. I can still see it. It's so funny that the 4 limbs, I'm like, of course. I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, okay, how am I going to do that? Now, already I'm home trying to think about how I'm going to practice that stuff. It's such a beautiful thing to watch drummers. I just love, it doesn't matter where I am. I can be at a fair, a country fair, and I'm going to go and watch the drummer, or in Cuba and watch the musicians there. And it's like nose pressed up. I just love it, regardless of if they're professionals or if they're amateurs alike. Wow. So the New York move, that was obviously something that drove you, something that was inspiring you to go. You were ready to go, I'm sure. If you're wailing, I love it when you do this, by the way. When you play your ride cymbal like that, watching you do that, that's so cool. I do that just to emulate playing the drums. That's awesome. So if you're jamming with Lenny Nelson and you're playing along to these records and things, were they encouraging you to just split school and go to New York and play?
I wanted to go to New York. That was my goal. Honestly, I didn't feel that I was ready, because I was like, okay, I really need to get a lot more under my belt, because Art Blakey's there, and Elvin is there, and Philly's there, and Ray Haynes is there, and Jimmy Cobb is there, and all these great drummers are there. Tony Comes there, all these. I have to get myself together. Miles is there, and Dizzy's there, and Sonny's there. So I just really felt like I needed to really hone in some more before going. But Wallace Roney said, "You know what? You got to go now." He said, "There's every level from amateur to innovator." He said, "And wherever you go, whatever level you're at, you're going to raise your level and you're going to get pushed, because you're going to see the very best." I'm like, well, yeah, but he's like, no, you need to go. You need to go and see it. And so fortunately, I listened to him and I went, because he was right. When I went there, I got to see so much that it just helped me grow in so many different ways. Seeing the amazing levels of musicianship, on every instrument in New York, to see the dedication, to see the pride, to be able to meet Art Blakey and to really become like a daughter to him and have him just take me under his wing, to be able to sit and talk to Elvin. I met Penny Clark, to talk to him. I got to see Papa Joe, and, to be befriended by Jimmy Cobb. And, Jimmy Cobb, he was so sweet to me. He was playing at Sweet Basil one time, and I would always go see all the cats. He was playing there, and he said, "You coming down on Sunday?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be here." And he says, "Good, because I got something for you." And I was like, "Really? Okay." So I went there on Sunday, and when he saw me, he smiled, and then when they took a break, he went in the back, and he came out with this cymbal bag, and he pulled this cymbal out, and he said, "Cindy, when Tony Williams joined Miles in 1963, he gave me this cymbal, And he said, I never played it. Now I want to give it to you. So he gave me this cymbal that Tony gave him, and by that time I had actually met Tony and, become friends and we exchanged numbers. And so I called him and I said, Tony, Jimmy Cobb, last night he gave me this cymbal that he said you gave him when you joined Miles in 1963. I said, do you remember that cymbal? And he went, yeah. He said, you got it right there? And I said, yeah. And he said, play it. And I was too shy to really play it. I just tapped it, ding, 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 just so he could hear the tone, And he said, yeah, dark and pretty. I'll never forget the way he said that. But I just wanted to, check in to make sure he was okay with Jimmy giving it to me. And he said, yeah, he was. And, so things like that, Lewis Hayes and Al Foster, I was really blessed to have a great friendship with him and Billy Hart and, all the cats that I was able to just meet and see and watch and learn from, watch the band leaders, watch how they related to their bands, watch how they related to the audience, watch how they conducted the music, how they conducted themselves, and some you want to keep, some you don't want to keep, but it was all a learning experience and it was all just absolutely an incredible gift.
Unbelievable. How old were you? Would you have been at that time?
When I went to New York, I was, 18, 19. I was about 19 and a half, getting ready to turn 20.
You were just a baby, right? Just a baby.
I was pretty much a baby, yeah.
That's amazing. Did you actually take any formal lessons with any of those gentlemen?
I did not. No, I just watched them and studied them. Tony, I just studied him and I still study him. Art Blakey, I never took a formal lesson from him, but he was always giving me some nugget, whether it was a life nugget, or a drumming nugget. One day he just said, this is how you shade cymbals. So he told me how to shade my ride cymbal. Another day he said, Cindy, you hang out and you take a train, because I lived up in Harlem, at that time. And he said, you take a train up to Harlem at night. He says, I want you to understand and know how to protect yourself. He said, and he showed me, he took a newspaper and he rolled it up.
Right.
And he said, this is the way you roll a newspaper up. He said, and you just hit a person in the temple. If there's somebody attacking you, trying to get you or whatever, trying to mug you, you hit them in that temple and they're going to go down. So he would teach me all these little things, Another funny one with Art Blakey was he had this bus and he came to pick me up and he was driving this big, huge bus. And he said, you drive it. I said, I don't know how to drive a bus. He said, you can drive anything. I've seen you drive. You can drive anything. So he pulled over and I drove the bus. We were driving that bus around, just me and him. And I was driving that bus all around New York City. So I know how to drive a bus because of that. So many things, that all relate. I mean, he told me about politics. He told me about just so many different things. It was just incredible.
Yeah, much more than drumming, it's about life. And
yeah.
What does he mean specifically about shading on the cymbal?
Different ways to hit it, different ways to tighten up the grip, to make it sound more lean and more tight, different ways to make it sound loping and bigger by, loosening up the grip, playing with different areas of the stick on different areas of the cymbal. You can use the shank, to different ways to play. He just taught me all that. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Do you still have that Tony cymbal?
Of course. I won't be getting it. Trust.
I bet that sounds just incredible.
Yes.
So what were you doing in New York? So obviously you were playing in jazz groups, and were you doing any other type of playing while you were in New York? And did that lead eventually to the Lenny Kravitz Gig?
I wasn't doing a whole lot of other playing stylistically because I was trying to focus on learning and following those master drummers, who were playing jazz, and happily so. But I played other kind of musics for sure. And I had that in my head because I've grown up with it, so that all came, pretty naturally. I've got to check on my niece. I hear her in the back. Can I take one little
Sure.
quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. No, this is good.
Honey?
I hope everybody is enjoying this as much as I am. I've had goosebumps a couple of times just hearing stories about our elder statesmen, Max Roach and Art Blakey. I could imagine Art Blakey would have been incredible to see, as Elvin Jones. All of those are drummers that you needed to see in person and experience. And I recommend, hey, there's so many folks here that I know. Wow, this is so great to see. Thanks, Bruce, for tuning in. And my friend Nicholas Lucero and Lola Delbert, how are you? Mike Fasano, Ralph, hey, Rick Stojak, Gina, nice to see you. Appreciate everybody's happy birthday wishes. Mr. Anthony McKelly, my friend Rich Cote. This is so great to see everybody. And man, I've been enjoying this chat. And one of the things I can't wait for when this situation changes is to be able to see live music. And I know I can listen to her stories all day too, Brett. This is fabulous. I can't wait to see some of the guests that I've interviewed, but I can't wait to play live and see my friends again. And no, she probably won't be singing a birthday song, although you did. So we're just chatting, just saying how much we're enjoying everything and saying hello to some of the folks that I know, and they're really enjoying your stories and enjoying just hearing about your experience. And do you remember where we left off? So you were playing jazz in New York, and that was your focus. I mean, I really think that you need to be and live in jazz. If you want, it's like playing golf. If you want to be a great golfer, you can't play once every couple of weeks. You need to play it and commit yourself to it, like playing the drums. But the good news is that for me, there's not a whole heck of a lot of jazz gigs, but there's a lot of other type of playing. But so you were playing jazz, and did that lead you to the Lenny Kravitz gig? And if it didn't, how did you and Lenny connect?
Well, Antoine Roney, great saxophone player, who's, I already called him my brother because he was the brother of my then boyfriend, Wallace Roney. He was friends with Lenny. And, he kept telling me about this guy, Lenny Kravitz, and I didn't know who Lenny was.
Right.
And then he said, well, he used to be married to Lisa Bonet. And I knew Lisa Bonet because I watched the Cosby Show all the time.
Yep.
And what I like, he said he's a rock and roll guy, but he likes Gretch drums and K-Zildjian cymbals. And I was like, really?
Whew. Hello.
I was like, yeah, that struck it for the tone with me. I said, okay, so he's got ears. I like that. So I was interested in meeting him just because of that. And Antoine told me that he had been looking for a drummer for a while, like a year and a half.
Wow.
And he said, well, next time he calls me, if he's still looking, would you like to talk to him? And I said, sure, okay. And some months went by. I really had forgotten about it because like maybe 3 or 4 months went by. And Antoine called me and he says, yeah, I got Lenny on the other line. You want to talk to him? I did. And Lenny asked me if I had my drums set up in my house, which I did. So he asked me to play on the phone. And I played and he, at the end I said, well, could you hear it? Was it clear? Because the phone speaker's so small and I wasn't playing that soft.
Yeah.
And, he said, yeah, I could hear it. Can you fly out here right now? Which was he was in LA and I was in New York. So the next morning, they got me a 6 a.m. flight. I flew out and he asked me to usually come out for like 2 days and just play with the band and no strings attached. And then I go home. But when I got out there ended up being this audition with like 40 people, 38 people or 40 people or something. So I auditioned and ended up staying there for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Doing my first video with him, which was "Are You Gonna Go My Way?"
Yeah.
And then, and that was an experience. I had never done anything like that before. Um, it was all very new to me. And then we started rehearsing, and then we started touring. Um, and so that's how we got to to meet each other, and that's how we started playing together. And we played together until from I met him in the end of 1992 because I went there right after Christmas and spent New Year's there. We went back. I went back home, and then like a couple of weeks later, we started rehearsing. 93, we started touring, and we toured and gigged until 2007. And then
Wow.
I toured him again in 2014 and 2015.
What an incredible run. Mike Fasano, another Gretch, terrific Gretsch artist, a drummer for Tiger Army. He commented a little bit back saying that he saw you with Lenny in South Africa in 2000, and you were amazing. She's one of Mike's drum
Oh,
heroes.
thank you.
Yeah, Mike is
Oh,
from Burbank. He's a fabulous drummer and was a guest on the show a few months back. But I remember seeing that video. That was everywhere. Are you going to go my way? Oh, man, I'm telling you, like, even I played that in this pop band, and I'm like, man. So here I am, and they're like, you need to play like that drummer, and I'm like, man, I'm trying to channel. I didn't know who you were, really, but what an amazing experience. Anything that you care to, any special memories that you have of that gig, because that was such a massive gig, to have.
yeah, it was a great experience. One of the things that I liked about that band a lot is that Lenny is a perfectionist, and I am too. And so we rehearsed a lot, which meant that we logged in hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours of playing time together. So that band, that initial band, that core band was so tight, you know. And for that ilk, to me, that was the best band in its category. And I'm not being biased, I don't think, because I was in it, but I just think it was because it was just so. That was a smoking band, With we, once we got like Jack Daly on bass, that really, locked things in a whole nother way. Um, we had a change of saxophone early on from Carl Denson to Harold Todd, and Harold, became the permanent member. There was Craig Ross on guitar, who had been with Lenny for quite some time already. Maybe I think he started in 1989 with Lenny, so he was already, very familiar with the music, and he knew all the songs and everything. So he was like the stable. And right about the time that I joined, we got George Lax on keyboards, another really great musician. So it was really, really happening. Michael Hunter, trumpet player, who played strong like Freddie Hubbard,
Yeah.
So that was really key. And then you had Lenny, who's like, his grooves are crazy insane, really, really so funky. So that band was happening, and so the amount of time that we spent playing together was amazing. I like to grow, I like to see growth and change, and but it was amazing because we had the same band for so long that we were able to actually grow together. Another great thing was that of course we toured all over the place, and that was incredible. But we also got to play with some incredible people. We played with Mick Jagger, we played with Robert Plant, we played with James Brown. So it was just really fantastic. Yeah.
Was this a goal for you, or was it something that pleasantly came along? And because you were a jazz musician, the music was probably a whole lot, I don't want to say less challenging. It was definitely physically a lot, well, technically maybe a little more straight ahead rather than playing four limb things. But do you feel that was doing this kind of gig something that you had envisioned yourself doing before?
No, it wasn't because, well, no, it wasn't. It was something that came along. But at that point, you have to remember Miles Davis was alive and well and on the scene,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's like my ultimate hero. I wanted to play with Miles. I wanted to play with Freddie Hubbard. I wanted, those were the gigs that I was hoping to get to play one day. And I didn't care what kind of music Miles was playing. I just wanted to play with him. So doing that was something that I wasn't planning on doing, and it came about, the opportunity came about because Antoine introduced us, but another friend of mine, Vincent Herring, he said, Cindy, and my friend Kim Clark used to say, Cindy, you should play arenas. She said, you got a big sound. You can be an arena drummer. I was like, an arena drummer? What are you talking about? And then my friend Vincent Herring, he was like, Cindy, you can do any kind of gig you want. He said, why don't you just take, and this was amazing that he told me this, he said, write down the kind of gigs that you want to do. He says, you know what, you can do a rock gig. Just write down rock gig. He said, don't write down who, just write down rock gig. He said, meditate on it and focus on it and, to see what happens. It's amazing because between the call with Antoine and between that advice, 2 months later, I was playing with Lenny. It was so funny.
That's crazy. That's well, as you said, there's no accidents and no happenstance. It's
some things are meant to be, for your line of progress. It's amazing, and it's interesting. I mean, I had prior to that, I played with Don Pullen for 3 years, who was an amazing piano player, and that was a great learning experience for me, because Don was such a strong piano player. So I had to play strong behind him, but still not overtake the piano. So I had to really learn the dynamic of where and where not to, And it's funny because I had heard his latest record at that time was called New Beginnings. And it featured Gary Peacock and Tony Williams. And of course, he being my hero and me, loving the other two as well, Don and Gary. I learned every song on there, and when I heard from Vincent Herring actually that Don was looking for a drummer, I was like, oh, I gotta play with him. And so I found his number and I called him, and he said, oh, I'm auditioning drummers right now. And he says, but I think I'm gonna have it, And I was like, oh man, okay, all right. So it went about 4 or 5 days later, he called me back, and he says, I haven't found a drummer yet. Would you like to come down and audition? And I said, yes. So of course, I already knew the songs. I went down to this studio on the east side, East Village, and we fit like a glove because I was so familiar with Tony's playing, and I already learned all the music on there. And he just looked at me like this. He was like, and he said, Cindy, I have to tell you, the reason that I didn't call you is because you're a woman. He says, but the moment we played, he says, we fit together so well. He says, I'm sorry. He says, I'm sorry that I hadn't played sooner. And we played together for 3 years.
That's incredible.
That was a great experience. And then, playing with the different bands I playing with Wallace was great because he was such a great trumpet player. And so innovative, and then with my own bands, and now playing with Carlos is amazing because he touches on so many different things. We play rock stuff, we play funk stuff, we play jazz stuff. I get to take solos. It's really very interesting the kind of rhythms that we work off of, and working with and being flanked by two incredible percussionists. Carl Perazzo on one side and Paoli Mejias on the other side. That's an amazing thing too, and it's interesting the way we pass the ball around, because I'm used to being the only percussionist, so I'm going to do whatever and that's what I do, But here, we pass the ball around, and it's interesting because then I get to hear somebody else's perspective, and I can take that, or not, or whatever, but I can, adjust that kind of to what I'm doing. So that's very interesting too. So all these experiences have been really, really wonderful. Just really, each of them gifts in themselves. Lenny was a gift, you know. Don Pullen was a gift. Carlos is a gift. Wallace was a gift. My bands are a gift because I've been so blessed with playing with such great musicians, you know.
Hmm.
So all, I just feel really thankful for all of it.
Hmm. You have a recording out now, correct? Is this the drummer? Some how what is yes? You tell us
Give
about
the
that.
drummer some. Yeah, thank you for asking about that. I give the drummer some. I'm
Yeah,
really very happy with that. You know, it's very guitar heavy because I love guitars. Um,
which is good.
Carlos is on it. Yeah. John McLaughlin, who is like a superhero of mine, not just
Wow.
hero, superhero. He's on it. Vernon Reed is on it. Kurt
Well,
Hammond is on it. So all these cats they're so great. So it's really amazing. I'm doing some singing on it, quite a bit of singing actually,
yeah.
which is my debut for this kind of thing. I wanted to try it and see how that felt. But there's a lot of playing on it too. I can't do a record and not have any playing on it. Um, Andy Vargas is rapping on it on a couple of songs, uh,
Wow.
and that's really cool. There's you know a couple of things where one is called "Changes in Your Hands," which is really cool because there's a nice message there. It's got Vernon Reed on that one, and I love what Andy's saying on that. That's really wonderful. So there, some different um, variety of things on this record.
Hmm. Hmm. Where can people find this recording, and when did you start recording this?
They can find it. You can download it on pretty much anything. iTunes. You can stream it. You can get it pretty much anywhere. You can look on my website and you can order the CD. You can order LP. Um, and we started recording. It actually took a while because between tours, I was touring and everybody was touring, so to get it all together took a little while. But I started recording with just Matt Garrison, the great Matt Garrison on bass, and myself. We were just experimenting and going over some things, and that was let's see, we started recording a couple years ago, like 2 years ago. Matt and I started recording, just putting some things down. And then Vernon Reed and Neil Evans came in and we played. And then we brought Benny Ritval into that. And then Vernon, Neil, Benny, Carlos, and myself played. Oh, and prior to that, Carlos, Matt, and Neil, and Matt and myself played. So that was most of the instrumentally based stuff. And then about a year ago, I started working with Michael Walden, because he was my vocal coach.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so we did the vocals with him, my vocal producer, shall I say. And so we started working together on that stuff. And we did the instrumentals we recorded in Las Vegas at the Palms. And then the vocal stuff with Narda, we recorded at his studio, which is called Tarpan. And that's in
Yes.
the Bay Area. Yeah.
Yes, that's incredible. Wow, I have to hear this now. I mean, I've seen it. It's only been out for, is it a month or so? You're recording
Came
it.
out September 18th. It came out.
It did. Holy smokes! Has it
The
been?
whole record. I mean, we put like in the summer we had put like four singles out, but then the whole release came out in September.
Well, the year is flying by, and I'm oblivious of the passage of time, apparently. So that's amazing. I will. I will have to listen to this. How did the gig with Carlos Santana? You were married to Carlos Santana, and obviously that's not how you got the gig. But how did that come about? How did playing with Carlos? Because he's had several unbelievable drummers in his past catalog. My friend Graham Lear, I believe, was the drummer in that band a long time ago, and well, many others. And how did the Santana gig come about?
You know, Dennis Chambers, my good buddy, who, we have been pen pals since I was 14, because my sister played in she sang for one of the P-Funk offshoot bands.
Okay.
So she met him and she introduced us. And so we've been in touch and writing back and forth and stuff since I was 14. He couldn't make a gig that Carlos was doing. Carlos he was in the band at that time, and Carlos booked this gig outside of the tour, and Dennis was already on another tour.
Yeah.
And I had met Carlos when I was playing with Lenny. We played opposite each other on a concert in Germany. So it was a Santana band, and then Lenny. So we kind of met very briefly then. And when Dennis couldn't make the gig, he said, he thought of calling me to sub for him. And they didn't know how to reach me, so they got online and found this guy who books my band sometimes. And the guy called me and he said, I got a call from the Santana management, and they want to know if you can sub. Yes.
I'll take it.
Yes. So I didn't even wait for I didn't even know when it was. I didn't know what, but I just said yes. And they invited me to Las Vegas to watch the band, because there's so many just different things that are happening, and they flow from one song to another, and there's different hits and segues, different things. So they brought me, to watch the band and to sit in a little bit. And I did, I went to Las Vegas. They were playing at the Hard Rock at that point, at the Joint. So I went and watched them. And then a couple weeks later, I did the gig I believe it was in Orlando with them. So I subbed that gig, and that was my first time playing. And Carlos and I, obviously started to become close. Mm-hmm. We were talking, and spiritually, I loved where he was at, and I was looking for that kind of thing in my life. I hadn't had it in a long time, and I needed it. I wanted it. So we, and there were other things, and we just had this kind of magnetism. Wonderful. So we got together and obviously got married, and I was doing other things, and he had Dennis, and then he switched drummers and had Pepe Jimenez for a while, and he said, I didn't ask you to be the drummer in my band, because everybody told me that with us being married, it wouldn't work.
Right.
I really love your playing, and I love your perspective, and that you're a jazz drummer. And he says, I really want to try you in the band. Do you think it can work? And I was like, yeah. What? So we decided, and it really works.
That's unbelievable. Well, I know Carlos loved Miles and loved Elvin and those. I mean, and if you have that connection as well as a personal connection, and if a husband and wife, if you can work together, I don't think my wife and I could work at a business. I think we could, but she doesn't think so. So therefore we can't. So, but that is amazing. I remember hearing that you were playing in this band, and I'm like, that's gotta be awesome. So man, you have had an unbelievable life and career to be blessed to be playing that you've played. This is amazing, and this is what we aspire to, so we look to folks like you that have had such tremendous success through hard work and perseverance and tenacity. And I tell you that we definitely look to you as I don't want to say heroes, but people to look up to aspire to be like. Dinah commented that Fred and her have worked together for 42 years. I'm hoping that that I had Mr. Gretch on in I think it was in November of last year, and hoping to have Dinah on in the next, hopefully, few weeks or so, if we can twist her arm, because I know she's got some incredible stories. And I want to thank her for connecting you and I didn't do that already, but when she sent me your contact, and I'm like going, this is crazy. And, and then you answered, and here we are. I'm like, so thank you for that. And that's incredible that you and Carlos can work together, and you don't hate each other.
No, we don't. We have a deep love and a mutual respect. And, you can work together. I think you just have to figure out certain things, not only about the relationship, but about what each person needs, And so we provide the space that each one needs. I need my space to do this and to do that, and he needs his space to do this and do that, but yet we need together this time. So whether we're home or whether we're on the road, we provide space for each other. Fortunately, I mean, we always get an adjoining room. So if somebody wants to go in that room and practice or read or study, because we both read a lot, we both study a lot, we both practice. Sometimes he wants to listen to this kind of music and I want to listen to that kind of music. So, then we have our study room, so we provide each other with the space that we need in order to allow ourselves to each be true to who we are. And I think that's a big key for us anyway in our relationship. And then there's a lot that we share that we like to talk about, we like to discuss. So we read a lot of books and listen to a lot of music, and then we like to talk about it. So we have enough in common and enough differences that it stays connected, but in a very interesting and inspiring way.
That's fantastic. That sounds exactly how it is with Kim and I, my wife and I, and I think I've gotten a little wiser as I've gotten a bit older. She's very wise for her 44 years, and I'm learning, and she gives me space. I'm here in my drum room, and I'm here all hours of the day, and she's never questions it. She knows what I'm doing, and
exactly.
It lets me be me. This is fantastic. So, how long have you actually been an official Gretch drum artist, and how did it come about, and what does it mean to you to be part of such an iconic drum family?
Oh my goodness. Officially, I've been a Gretch drum artist since, I don't know. I don't remember the year exactly. I got my first Gretsch kit in 1982 or 83.
Yeah.
But officially it's been since 2000 something. I don't remember exactly. I know that I was on the road with Lenny, and I was playing another drum, which was a great company. But I was recording a lot with my Gretsch and trying to turn those drums kind of into Gretsch. And I thought,
right.
That's really cool. I need to just go ahead and see if I can hook up with Gretsch. And, fortunately it worked out in my favor. So yeah. What was the second half of your question?
What does it mean to be part of such an iconic drum family?
Oh, thank you for that. And that's an important question. I'm glad you asked that. It means a whole lot to me because the music that I love the most is honed by the sound of Gretch drums. And my favorite drummers all played Gretsch except Roy Haynes and Buddy Rich. So there's only two, who are my favorites that didn't play Gretsch drums. Art Blakey, from Art Blakey to Max Roach to Tony to Elvin, to Philly, all of them played Gretsch, even like Mitch Mitchell and even John Bonham had a Gretsch. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, John Bonham had a Gretsch kit. My tech, Jeff Ogletree, told me about that kit. I heard about it, but Jeff was the key because he teched for John Bonham. So he was the key for me to confirm it, even though I had already heard it. And that doesn't surprise me because he was listening to jazz drummers. He was listening to Mac. He was listening to Tony. You know, so I'm really not surprised that he gravitated to Gretch drums as well. For whatever length of time or for whatever usage, I don't even know. But so many of my heroes played Gretch drums, and the sound, like I said, of jazz was built around the tone, the texture, and the aura that's created by a Gretch drum. And it sounds so beautiful. They sound so musical when you play a melodic kit that gives you feedback. That you hear notes, not just a plop or a hit. Where you actually hear music when you hit that drum. It's it doesn't become beating a drum; it becomes playing your instrument. It's an instrument, and so when you get that back, you feel so inspired in a creative way and in a musical way that it makes you play different and it makes you think differently. So for me, that's really, really key. So when I listen to all the music that I love, when I listen to Art Blakey, when I listen to Philly, when I listen to all these cats, when I listen to Tony and I listen to Elvin, if I listen to Fia de Kilimanjaro or ESP or any of those albums, where you can hear that tone. It sounds so beautiful. All the Blue Note stuff,
Yeah.
the Columbia stuff, all the groups. And Tony's a great example because he played so many different textures and styles of music. So when you hear him play with, the Blue Note sound, with the avant-garde cats, the straight ahead cats, and you hear him play with Miles through the Columbia years, the way that was recorded,
Mm-hmm.
that's incredibly beautiful. When you hear him with Lifetime, that's a whole other thing, and he's starting to get into this other thing, and that's beautiful. And then when you hear him with the later Lifetime groups where he switched to the bigger kit, that's a whole other thing. It's so musical, that's what grabs me.
It
And
grabs a lot of people.
I need to be a part of that, and it inspires me. It makes me want to play. When I hit a drum and I hear do do, I want to play. If I hear, and the drums all sound the same, and it just sounds like I'm hitting on a pillow or a pad, that sounds inspiring. I'd rather just read a book or something.
I agree. I have the CD of Million Dollar Legs, and the one song on there where Tony is singing, I think it's "What You Doing to Me, Baby," but the drum sound on that album is unbelievable, and that would have been his big drum era. I saw him in Toronto in '92, and I was maybe 10, 12 feet away from him. Every drummer in Toronto was there, let me tell you. And it was just, and he starts off the night with the double stroke roll and the various rudiments. And and they introduced him incorrectly, both sets. He wasn't happy.
They
But
did?
man, yeah,
What do
they call him
say?
the Joe Williams. And
Joe
poor
Williams?
Tony he hung his head and he shook his head, but the show was unbelievable. Mulgrew Miller was just over to my right and watching, and saw Wallace playing with him that night. Wallace Roney. Oh man, and my friend actually bootleg recorded it. I haven't heard it yet, but I'd love to. So,
Well, you got to send
well,
me a copy of that.
I will speak to him. My friend Joey Anuzzi has that, and yeah, I'll see if I can
Please.
get a copy. Yeah, that'd be pretty nuts. I think you actually even hear the intro, but nevertheless, I want to thank you so much for spending the hour and a half with us and sharing about your journey. Anthony McKelly is here in the house. Do you know Anthony? He's a fabulous drummer, Gretsch artist from.
Never met Anthony, but hi, Anthony. Thanks for being here.
Yes, and he, in fact, he was at the Toronto show saying he was front and center, had his hair parted in the front. So yes, that's funny. Yeah, everybody was there. I was looking over and recognizing all of these drummers, and it was great. What do you have happening for the rest of 2021? Do you have anything on the books, or do you What do you have going on?
I don't have any tours on the books for 2021 yet. We're all waiting to see what's going to happen with, this awful COVID situation. I do have some recordings coming up. In fact, next week we're going to do some more recordings with the Santana band for the new Santana record, which is hot, hot, hot. It's really slamming, really incredible record that's getting ready to come out with the Santana band, and kind of different because some of it is really rock oriented. It's really hardcore. It's going to be a great record.
Cool.
So going to do some more recording for that next week. And then I'm looking at, recording with my band again. I want to do two things, one that's kind of similar to Give the Drummer Some. And got some ideas for that I won't divulge at this moment because they're not set in stone yet. But there's that. And then I want to do another recording with my band, my touring band. And so I'm actually got a lot of musical ideas for that. Some songs that I've written that I never recorded, that we played live, for a long time. And so I'm going to incorporate some of those and then some new things. And I'm going to use different drums on each one. Probably on the record that's like Give the Drummer Some, I might use the bigger kit, and then on the other one, nice. I'm going to use probably one of my round badge 18-inch kits. That sounds so good. Goodness.
I hope I see you in person sometime to play, because I know it would be just amazing. Anthony said, Cindy, you're playing with Pharoah Saunders in Toronto was life-changing for him. So I never saw that, but that's crazy.
Wow, thank you. I loved playing with Pharoah. I had such a great time with him. I mean, he's such a great musician. His sound is so beautiful and so close to Coltrane, his whole concept, and he's very free within the structure of what he's doing. So it was amazing to play with him. Yeah, he's just such an incredible musician. So thank you for remembering that concert. That touring with him was beautiful.
That's fantastic. How long ago was that?
That was before I played with Lenny. So it had to be early 90s. Yeah.
So, wow. That's amazing. What an experience. Well, an unbelievable experience. So where can people find you on the web if they want to learn more about you, get your music, see what you're up to, and connect with you?
I have Instagram, and all of these have to be the official sites because I've been hacked lately. My Twitter account was hacked, so we now have a new Twitter account. So it will say that this is my new Twitter account. So there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, and there's cindyblackmansantana.com, my website. So all of those will be on, and I hope you guys join, and I'll be, within this next several months, adding some new things to my website, which hopefully will be a little bit more interactive for people. And yeah, I want to start having like some more conversations and places for people to really, get into questions and talking and different things. And this is the time, I think, for us to, now that we're in this COVID lockdown, we can find more ways to communicate, because unfortunately, the touring is not happening and all that, but we can do it in other ways, like we're doing today.
Yes. Yeah, and people love to speak and interact, as you said. It's not as good as seeing you in person, but it's certainly better than, not hearing from folks. And thanks so much for sharing about your journey so far. And there's much more to come. So thank you, everyone, for tuning into episode 43. Thanks again, Cindy. Thank you, Dinah, Gretch. I appreciate that. Everyone, take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.